So, speaking of food, there's another article that made me laugh because of one of the words they used. And here's the headline is that J.M. Smucker's CMO on what she learned about refreshing dusty brands. And I just thought dusty was a funny word to use, but what they're trying to say is like brands that have kind of gone past their prime in influence or being popular, like Jif peanut butter. Like how are those brands being revitalized? And we actually know in our world an example, a few marketers led by uh, Ty Lopez and his whole gang, where they bought up some out of business names like Radio Shack, Pier One, and some others, and trying to revitalize those dusty brands. So my question to you is: good idea or not?
Um, First of all, the word I liked was schmucker. When you said what a name. And then Dusty Brands, I think it's a good idea. From what I know, the whole Ty Lopez thing, no, that shit didn't work. Um, and so data from this little data I have access to, it didn't work. You had Pier One and Radio Shack and all that. Um, but I think refreshing dusty campaigns may work. Like I think Dos Equis played out the most interesting man in the world. Like that one went on way too long, way longer than it should have. Or that the protect yourself from mayhem like me. Anytime I see this guy, I'm like, they're still doing this. Is
Yeah, that's a good one.
good for him. He's making money and stuff. But like I think that other brands who get that right might be like a progressive where you have Flow. Flow is the face, but now Flow is kind of getting phased out. You start seeing the other guy, or what was the other insurance commercial with
Jake
the
from
young
State
black?
Farm.
Yeah, yeah. Like they have that young black dude, but prior it was somebody else. Like I think you got to refresh dusty campaigns. A whole dusty brand that's hard to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is hard to do. I think especially now. It used to be, okay, it used to be in the United States. I'm talking about on a decades long perspective. You used to have three channels: NBC, ABC, and whatever third one there was. And then and brands like Jif and Folgers and even the James Smucker, which was the jam or whatever. It's like people trusted brands, big brands. Nowadays, you could, if you see, and I'll speak for myself, if I see an ad I like of a food or an apparel, I do not care what the brand is. I'm looking at the ingredients, I'm looking at where it's made, I'm looking at a completely different set of information than I think consumers looked at before. So that's probably why Radio Shack, Pier One, and the rest of those that probably didn't work for them because they were betting on people caring about the brand, which I think is getting less and less and less and less important.
I think going back to what I was talking about earlier with that group and the guys, and they all wear the same type of shoes, Brooks and Nokas or whatever those are. Um, I'm looking at that, Hey Dudes, those types of shoes, and it reminded me of like to your point, Dimitri, when back in the day, for me it was like Nike and Reebok, maybe Adidas. You might see some K Swiss or something like that, but like the big dogs
That's a
are
good one.
yeah, the big dogs are Nike and Reebok, and then now the world has gotten much smaller through technology, and as a result, like your brand recognition is nowhere not as strong as it was back in the '90s.
And maybe it's and I was thinking in what you were saying too just now, it's there's still brand recognition, but you have to go way more niche. So I don't even know the shoes that you just mentioned. I've never heard of any of those. But for the people who do know them, it's a small brand, and you can immediately identify with that group just by wearing those shoes. I'm guessing like Sperry's used to be that was kind of a niche thing, and a lot of people in my high school would wear them, and that would be the cool shoe or whatever. And so I'm guessing these are similar to that, where or Tom's shoes. I'm like whatever. So that right away more detail in a more detailed way identifies all the values that you stand for. So you can't just, hey, I like Radio Shack. No, it doesn't work anymore because way too many people shop at Radio Shack. It's just like saying I like Walmart. Well, okay, well, what specific niche brands do you like at Walmart? Then I can know something about you.
Yeah, man. I mean, and you just mentioned Radio Shack. It made me think of things like Circuit City. They're not around anymore, and Radio Shack not around anymore. And there's a couple others. Best Buys are dying. Um, yeah, the world's too small, man. The world is smaller, and there are more options, and so your brands. While and on the opposite side of that, I think branding is more important than it's ever been. And the reason I think that is like, let's go back to the whole plumbers and electricians. Like, if you Google uh, plumber near me because something went wrong in your house, and you have all these plumbers come up, chances are you haven't heard of them unless you've been directly working with one for a long time. Chances are you haven't heard of them unless you have interacted and spent some time with them. How do you do that with a plumbing company? It would be like you watching something on social media, seeing them all around your web or whatever. And if you have some familiarity with that brand, then that brand has more of a chance of getting your business. The meta point behind that is the more you can get people to spend time with you, the better chance you have of converting them. And that is your brand, is that they're going to spend time with your brand. So while it's lost its juice, on the opposite side of that truth is another, which is I think that it is important to get that juice.
Yeah, I'm starting to think of brands like Yeti coolers have they become just an unbelievably massive brand. And by buying a Yeti cooler, you likely don't get any cooling improvements over a similar type of cooler that's half the price, but you at least get, not at least, the primary thing that you get is finding your
Yeah.
people who will complement your Yeti. To say, I've also got a Yeti. Okay, well that means you probably like the outdoors. You probably make six figures or up. You um, like a sleek design there. So you're finding your people. And now that I'm thinking about this, is as AI progresses, as marketing gets more and more evolved. Okay, so we're already seeing big name brands, Nestle, um, Kellogg's. The only way they're surviving is by buying up tiny little brands that are identifying certain niches, that they're not promoting old brands. They're buying these small brands. And so I think it keeps niching further and further and further down, and brands are going to be less about mass appeal. Like wearing a polo shirt used to be a status symbol. Now I don't think it is. And now it's more the shirt that you're wearing, and the or whatever brand of a product that is being purchased has to be more of a reflection on the values of the people who are buying it than the actual product itself, which I think is a huge opportunity for individual business people, entrepreneur types who want to start a brand, or are trying to start, or thinking of something to do. You can start a brand for 1,000 people or 5,000 people. That could be a very profitable thing to do. And you can find a lot of friends that way.
That that is true, and you're the one who's you've articulated that with me before, and it makes sense. And if people don't think that's true, then um, look at Budweiser last year. This time last year, they brought in I forget her name, Dylan something, forget her name, um, and that that was a I mean, it almost killed them, right? Because people identify with Budweiser. There's a certain identity with somebody who drinks Budweiser, Bud Light. Now you bring in somebody, in this case, Dylan, who was a transgender, who conflicts with their identity. It hurt their brand. The marketing CEO lost their job. They lost a lot of money. It's people see themselves within brands, and if you're able to make somebody see themselves and say, "Hey, that's me," then you've done an effective job of branding.
Yes. So maybe we will see a more diversified selection of brands, and that we can all better identify with the. Though I think there'll be more choice. At least I hope there will be. I think there'll be more choice than ever before on any product, any service. You can probably get exactly what you want, just exactly what you want. A lot of times you don't even know what you want, and they'll tell you, and then you'll go with it.
Yep.